Hello and welcome to this video about the Port Washington branch, particularly the ability to schedule express trains and the constraints put on scheduling by the need to schedule essentially twice as many trains in order to serve the new Madison Concourse at Grand Central. Um, the point here is basically that the ability to schedule more trains with a variety of stopping schedules that would be pleasing to passengers is affected more by having two continuous tracks out to the Port Washington station than by the ability to lay up more trains at Port Washington. So I don't agree with whatever station plan it is they have for more storage, because they have prodigious train storage there now. It's 8 tracks. There's 2 purpose-built layup tracks that both take 12-car trains, I believe, and then you can store I think other than that, 3 12-car trains at least on the station tracks and another 3 10-car trains. It might be 4 10-car trains and 3 12-car trains. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, I have a station proposal there that removes the 2 layup tracks, and if you have need of 4 more storage tracks for 12-car trains, I suggest using an elevator, and I'll discuss that later on. Alright, so now we'll take a look at the general conditions regarding capacity on the Port Washington branch, and I'll try and show a few places where improvements could be made without it being a great grand project, which is something we might be better trying to avoid at this point. You see here, there's Woodside, and this is where the Port Washington branch turns off the main line. It really runs as a separate line to Woodside from Herald Interlocking, and that saved them a whole lot, miles and miles of unneeded trackage in 1910 when they first laid this thing out. But now you would think going to a more capacity enhanced version would be preferred, but I've gone a little too far here. What you're looking at is my these lines drawn into the map is my ESA, East Side Access Mitigation Project, which proposes to alleviate the bottleneck they've created at Herald. It's a little bit jump the gun here with this flyover from the main line, because that would not be included, although it works nicely because you see you have no junctions here. Even with this is the 6th track, of the main line, which would run from the Rockaway Beach branch all the way into the city, a minimum of 6 tracks. And you see there's still no junction, and with the flyover there's no junction on on that in that direction either. So, but the only reason I'm including this is to show you the possible Elmhurst station, which has been talked about. The platforms are quite narrow, but wanted to have it 4 tracks So when you get to the end of the Port Washington branch, westbound, you could transfer across platform to train to the terminal of your preference, Grand Central or Penn Station. And that might be a sane way of husbanding the limited train capacity on the Port Washington branch while still providing decent frequency at both terminals in Manhattan. Optimally, you could run schedules just as before, as far as Elmhurst, with an equal number of those trains serving each Manhattan terminal. Then add the cross-platform shuttles to get the frequency in Manhattan up to what's expected. So I'll be discussing this station again on my return trip, suggesting various improvements. Now coming to what's next. There's the Manhasset Bridge, the high trestle, and we're in Manhasset, and by the time you get there, it's still 2 tracks, but I don't see any platform on the other side. See, I mean, of course, this was a 2-track station, and Lord knows there a ruler table. How about the ruler? We'll try looking at the ruler. See, this right-of-way is quite wide here. What is that? Well, it's not all that wide. It's only 50 feet. That's barely enough for 4 tracks if you're constrained by platforms on both sides, and I think you should have platforms on both sides. Here we have, do we have 2 tracks, or is this place? Yes, this is where they have some kind of drainage thing instead of, I don't know what that thing is. It's rather annoying. No, there is no track here. There is no second track. So this is something that should be changed. And Plandome, it sort of proves it, because wherever it is, and because you look at this ancient bridge here, and you can see it's a 2-track bridge with only one side of it in use. And if you look at the look at it from the ground, you see how they've you see, it's an ancient bridge. It's an old style of bridge building. I don't know, back to 1830s, I know they were building them like this. So Lord knows when this thing was built. In the 90s, they came along and built this side tunnel. You know, the way to do it would be to move the abutment, build a temporary bridge and move the abutment, or you could use half of it because the other half isn't being used, rather than punching a hole through the embankment like that. That's a hack job. And then if you look, maybe we can see it from here. I might have to summon some other imagery here. If you look at the way, oops, this platform is put over that bridge. It shouldn't be there. It stinks. Maybe they thought it would attract more attention. But pretty soon we'll have things that go off in the cab of a truck that keeps them from smacking into the bridges. How much lower you want the road? Well, you could maybe, I don't really see a benefit to remediating that if modern technology can provide a solution. to keep trucks from ramming into the bridge. That should be in every car soon. Transit agencies should be demanding that. And get rid of this crummy bridge over here. This looks this extension of the platform. It's 600 feet on the other side. So why have this? It looks like a high crime area. There's no way to get out of there. Why would you even go over there? I'll bet nobody does. And of course, the station was designed originally as a two-track station. It has to have a platform on the other side if you want to be able to provide for a high number of passing trains to keep Port Washington Terminal stocked with trains if you need so many to run express service. Alright, so here we are at my station proposal, and I think we'll just take a break at this point and let me reconnoiter. Alright, now to have a look at the Port Washington station as I see it. Well, first of all, if you have a station on a slight rise like this, you wouldn't raise the platforms if you're going to do that. You would lower the tracks, and then the boarding would be level with the concourse, which is between the station and the platforms, and a few other things like the skewed concourse shed there. It's 2 degrees off. I mean, the whole town has this grid, 8.3. It ends in 8.3, I think, and so the grid must be 10.3. I mean, the shed there. I don't know what they were thinking there, but it's the usual kind of sociopathic stuff. Anyway, something interesting about this station is I think the original lead tracks were kept, and you have to be able to see it. Here's the center line of the station tracks. You see it's off center versus the station, and then the 2 lead tracks are off to the side here. There's only 1 track on the other side of it. And that's because the way they built these stations is that allows plenty of room for the single station track to come in from the west and merge with the lead tracks, and the 3 to come in from the east and merge at a different point. So this station has, I think, 3 regular switches, 1, 2, 3, and 2 double slip switches. That's the way a double slip switch looks. Inside double slip switch with a 5-degree crossing angle. It's sort of a generic idea. They generally do them, well, with slightly different angles, but they're all around 5 degrees. You wouldn't need half of this slip switch here. You could have a long crossover like that and do away with half of that slip switch. But for the elevator, which would hold 4 additional 12-car trains, which ends there. So you wouldn't want to have the crossover running through that. Well, you could have it anyway, but I don't think so. Now, the interesting thing about this locating this, see, it's a very rough design. Like, it took a couple of days to get these curves positioned, even as inadequately as they are, because you see, this is only about 10 feet wide here. It would preferably be wider and be uniform with the outside platform, which after all is narrower to begin with. But also, you know, I made the central platforms, the two central platforms are 22 and a half, and the outside ones are 15, but you could probably have them 20 for the central ones and 12 and a half for the outside ones. The outside platforms are a convenience for getting on and off the train, even with some kind of security perimeter with long gates that could be closed. I mean, there's quite a bit to it, but anyway, for the elevator, there you might want to have a shed over the elevator to protect the cars from the elements and to prevent too much water from going down into the elevator pit. So that ties in, I think, with this lunette window on the front of the station, which is a very old station, and of course they were making efforts then to attract passengers with striking architecture and so on, like the Jamaica station today. Boy, I'll bet that guy never works for the Port Authority or MTA again, because that's about the most iconic, the best station of the past 75 years in the United States. It's well done. Of course, they skimped on elevators a little bit, but always probably with the excuse of increased security. But there's the lunette window, you see, and if you wanted to have a shed over the storage track elevator, it's all one elevator. You would have part of the mechanism sticking into the platform at intervals. They sell these elevators on Alibaba. I mean, of course, it'd probably have to be something more substantial than that, but I mean, they have them for long trains. You elevate as long a train as you want. But this would be different. This would be, if you had 2 levels on the elevator, why, that gives you 14 12-car trains stored at Port Washington. I don't know how you could want any more than that, but it stays reasonably within the footprint that exists now. So if you have a shed over these connected to the platform sheds, or not, you know, connected hard, but connected, and you'd have a couple of benches here in the concourse area where you could watch people coming out of the station, and the top of the shed would end up right about even with the top of the station, with its imitative lunette window on a giant scale compared to that of the station. And the red center line of the station tracks now lined up with the new center line of the lunette window. So at this point, the giant lunette window would be visible from the concourse and from the sides of the concourse, viewed from either parking lot. Then, if you raise the next level of 4 12-car trains, that would put the lunette optimistically 14.5 feet or 15 feet higher, and you'd be able to see it from across the street, lined up over the existing lunette window, sort of an homage to same, and finally raising the bottom level of 12 or 4 12-car trains. Hopefully it could be made so that the shed roof would then collapse in relation to the elevator and stay actually stationary, so that it wouldn't tower over the station in a gangly way, but just stay right at the optimum honorific height. That would that's my theory about the platform or the train shed for the elevator. And to clarify that, the edges of this elevator train shed would overlap the V-shaped so-called balloon sheds of the central platforms, and the water from the train shed would drain into the customary central column drainage of the slightly V-shaped. Well, they're not T-shaped, but not V-shaped either. But you get the idea. The water runs to the center and then down the supports. So, and another clarification is this yellow line here. That represents the very limit of the extent of possible elevator there, and that would accommodate 13-car trains with 50 feet left over. But I've made these platforms 1,050 feet, which is ample for a 12-car train, and the elevator would more likely be more or less the length of the platforms, keeping the vertical elements which have the mechanism of the elevator at the edges of the two central platforms. Also, since elevators are dangerous, you would have to have platform barriers, at least on the inside edges of the two central platforms, and preferably they could be full height barriers of glass. You have to have the place for the elevator mechanism, which could probably provide some lateral support to the barriers. Then you have to have the doors for M series type cars, and they all have to be arranged together. Also, the central columns or supports of the balloon sheds for the central platforms. It's not exactly a conundrum, but it would be interesting to find out exactly what kind of spans are required so that the whole thing can be coordinated into a workable design. Now, in addition to the two platform barriers, I think you'd want a security perimeter, and I envision that as running along the outside platforms on both sides up to the corner of the near corners or near corners of the station building, And I think, with a curve here, something could be designed. I see it for some reason as, black metal poles held together with horizontal members, quite sturdy and tall enough so that if you tried to climb up it or ran into it with a car, it would get caught on security camera. And of course, there would need to be entrances. I think along the 1,000-foot platforms, 3 broad entrance ways would be sufficient. It might take up less, no, it would take up more space than this here needed to accommodate the bridge. But of course you can't have a bridge with the elevator shed moving up and down. So I think you would have 3 openings on each side with sliding gates, maybe motorized. Maybe some kind of curved gate could be employed here if it could slide into a part of a uniform curve. That would work. So there's no bridge. Now we have to discuss that problem. And remember, as I said, there's this way this train station was intended to be built first. I think they redid it in the 90s, but it sort of steps out. You see the close single track comes up and merges, and then the 3 tracks are brought in at a different point, and that's the way the trackage puts one foot in front of another that way. But you see, that's not what they've done here. They have, first of all, these layup tracks which don't go all the way to the top of the station, the head house, or whatever you want to call it. But they can accommodate 12-car trains, or at least this one can. And I think the reason they designed, they did exactly the opposite of what the customary way to do it would be. They moved the close track, they extended it, and then you can see here there's a sharp reverse curve in these 3 tracks, and maybe 100 feet between the 2 curves, and then they're all scrunched down abruptly to get into the lead tracks. So that's different, and I think that was done to make more room for this layup track on the outside here, which comes up right about to there, I guess. But these are all layup tracks. That thing would have to go. I don't know, what is it? Is it some electric thing, or is it just some separate offices? I don't know, but if you want to have station tracks there, that certainly can't be there. So now we're getting to the point where we have to make lemonade out of this incursion on the property of this stilted building here. I don't mean stilted in an offensive way, you understand. It's got parking under it, and with the entire tracks moved over, this is better than 5 feet, this distance, to move it to the lunette window, to line the whole thing up with that, and then taking say 2.5 feet and 2.5 feet off of these 2 platforms. That would be another 5 feet. So it would be at least 10 feet farther to the west here in this corner of the parking lot, but the end of the platforms would be the same distance as they are from the station house, just that maybe the outside one would be the same size and the inside one would be broader, but it would stick out, not quite so far into the parking lot. And the solution here is to open up a through path between the two parking lots and allow both I guess it's for the purpose of the train, but you see, if you want to walk from your car around to the other side of the station, that's like half a mile. This would make a really neat arrangement for not only getting to one platform, but you have to be able to get to all of them so that you have access to the platforms, all of them, from the concourse by the station house. Then you have the 6 openings secured by double sliding gates along the outside platforms, then here through a series of ramps and a bridge out here, access to all platforms from the south end of the station. And the way this would work is to have a bridge here, it has to be quite high in order to get over the trains. So a tunnel is better, and you only need probably 120 feet to have an ADA ramp down to the tunnel. So this ramp would start here and run along, just protruding a bit from the platform with its roof, which would be sticking through the poles of the outside perimeter, so as not to get too much water into the lower level. Then a tunnel that goes over here, short tunnel, and the elevator on the central platform here, plus a stair. So that way you get the whole thing done with 2 elevators. Likewise, this other side of it. Because you can't have a tunnel running under the train elevator, 4-track elevator, you would need to have a bridge down here. And if you have it at the middle of the parking lot, more or less, you can achieve the needed height with just a short switchback, starting in that direction and coming up to the bridge. You could have welcoming landing and split stairs into the parking lot, and a way to close it off so that at the bridge is where the security perimeter begins, not on the ramp. And then this would be only an enclosed ramp leading back down to the platform on the west, seamless with that security perimeter. So, among other things, that would serve to put this parking lot on the map, so to speak, because it's rather unused now, since there's no access to any platforms from it currently, and it's about a half a mile to walk around to the other side of the station. So that one would be fully utilized. But of course, with Uber and Lyft now, there are all kinds of ways to, including walking, to achieve the first mile or mile and a half or two. And nobody wants multi-level parking in Port Washington. I'm pretty sure of that, and it's easy to understand why. And we want to avoid that, so there has to be some priorities set for having a space so you can park at the train station. I would think to encourage use of Uber and Lyft and pooling also, which probably keeps the expenses about to what it would be if you drove yourself. Now there's just one more thing with this station which I noticed just a little bit ago. In this part where it gets scrunched down here, the tolerances were so close that they exceeded the standard tolerances for getting this 10th car. There are 10 12 car, there are 2 10-car tracks and 6 for 12 at the existing station, and the platform tracks hold 10-car trains. But this one, under normal circumstances and in keeping with the rules, would only hold 9 cars. See, here you have a reverse curve of just 60 feet, which runs onto the, well, that's about the wheelbase of one of these trains. So you have the wheel trucks turning in opposite directions, but it's at the end of the platform, so it doesn't matter. You're proceeding from a full stop. But the other thing they did, I assume, in order to squeeze in the eastern layup track, is they put these 2 tracks less than 12 feet apart. Right here. That's an amazing thing. I mean, that's a real no-no. Every set of standards from, for 100 years prohibits that anywhere, not just in terminal track. So they really, I don't know how they got that approved. I suppose the FAA had to approve it, or FRA, excuse me. Maybe you could have a flying track there, but it's clear they don't, well, never mind. So that concludes the discussion of the Port Washington terminal, except to say that I was surprised to see in Wikipedia that it says the tracks weren't extended to Port Washington until the turn of the last century, 1898 or something, which to me it doesn't seem to jibe with the age of that bridge at Plandome with the great granite blocks for abutments, but I see no reason to doubt it. And it might be they intended to have the abutment so heavy that they would do all the sinking they were likely to do before any trains pass over, and rearrange the vertical alignment of that bridge. That's a possible reason for having the labor-intensive means of building. All right, so now we'll take a look at the layout of the entire line, because I neglected to show that before. And there's a few more things drawn in here now, so you can see it better. Here's Woodside, where the number 7 crosses the main line of the Long Island Railroad. Then from the point where it diverges from the main line, the Port Washington branch extends about, a little better than 13 miles, to the best of my ability to measure it quick, and has 13 stations currently, so it's a very desirable piece of property, running through all this heavily conurbated area, and then out to the little town of Port Washington. And also I wanted to show you some of my machinations to suggest third tracks, you see, which prove about all they prove is that if you're going to machinate in Google Earth, it's going to take quite a while. This circle, for instance, is 45 lines or 46 or something. You have to draw the tangents and then draw the circle from the tangents, and you got to draw 4 circles for each track if you're doing a single line for each track, to get the node space so it looks like a curve instead of a bunch of straight lines. Alright, so next is Plandome, and here we go, if I can find it. So here we are at Plandome, and you can see part of the Plandome Country Club, which should figure prominently in our calculations. Now, the first thing I've noticed measuring things around here is this platform. The existing one extends over 700 feet from this side of the bridge, 715 feet there. So I really don't see what the object was of building this great, it's a steel beam bridge founded upon the existing bridge and extending way over here. You would be better off with a promontory on the platform, so you could watch goings on at the station from above. There's no need for such a lengthy platform and to go through all the expense to build it there. For instance, Forest Hills is 550 feet. And this station will never see the traffic that one gets. So, to get a little more traffic, well, first of all, you have to be able to circulate trains at Port Washington and back without the conflicts, directional conflicts presented by the one-track line. It was originally a 2-track line, that's clear, and of course you have to have a second track if you want the ability to turn around trains at Port Washington. And like I say, it doesn't matter so much the number of layup tracks, as you've already got 8. You need the ability for 2 trains to pass in opposite directions, and it's an impossible task to arrange that when there's only 1 track. So I don't think that the rebuilding of the Port Washington station is such a priority as they would suggest. Here you could have a platform with a very nice entrance to the parking lot. It's only 2 feet lower, 6 feet lower than the platform, but nothing that would require elevators. You could have controlled access to the country club, and they could choose to issue digital access authorization at will, and I think it would be worth it for them to do that, given the extra business they would have for guests and club members. At this end, you would need a public L-shaped stair down to the tunnel. It would be quite a pleasing looking stair with a corner landing, and And it might be possible to gussy up the tunnel portal because it's really not worth it to change the tunnel, and it does provide separation from the road so nobody can strike a pedestrian when they're in the tunnel rather than having a sidewalk at the side. That would be a terrible job to move the abutment. So as it wasn't done when it should have been, and you know, they do extra stuff instead, like extending this platform. So you have the bridge, if not ready for a second track, it's designed for it, and the second track should be built. In addition, this end of the platform would require an elevator, so that would have to be ensconced amidst the L-shaped stair, and there should be some kind of security for the elevator. I would think system-wide there should be you know, something for authorized passengers. That is, someone who's ridden recently or has a valid ticket that they can swipe or tap to get into the elevator, rather than you know, sending someone out to kick people out of the elevators. So that's that, and now we're off to view our two-track upgrade of the Port Washington branch to the end of the line. And the first thing you see here is this bridge, and they've put these new concrete ties and everything right in the middle, as they did back here where I drew out the tracks. It might be necessary to change the bridge anyway, but I think if the existing tracks are now moved to the side after being built in the middle, you'd be able to get under that bridge without building a new bridge. Then we come along to Manhasset, and you see there is a zigzag here. It's rather subtle. There it is. Because they expanded the platform, which is not an entirely bad idea, but it makes the situation tighter here. I've placed this center line 12.5 feet from the track, as they have at Bayside. All the tracks are spaced 12.5 feet at Bayside. Because the railroad or someone has squandered their property and made it so that it's impossible to add the second track easily. This is spaced, I guess about 7 feet, so from the center line, so it's really quite close. Let's have a look. There's a little error of parallax or something. Let's try and make it pessimistically 6 3/4 feet. So it's too close, and you have a different elevation here. This is 82 feet at the track, and over here it's 84, so it's already descending into the cut that is the Manhasset station. This center line is now at least 20 feet from you know, any built the paved area. So you could have a 12.5 foot platform and a retaining wall. I can't get a good look enough at this bridge to discern whether you would have to replace it, or will there be room for the second track and a platform? I rather doubt it. It's a reinforced concrete bridge. it's fairly important. I don't know, you can cross down here. It could be half demolished, leaving 2 lanes for cars to pass. Or it might be possible to dig out the embankment, shore up the bridge, and extend a wide enough platform under it to reach the other side. One thing that would be difficult to accomplish would be to put another bridge here or here. This one is a cul-de-sac, pleasant cul-de-sac, and the road is way lower than the tracks, so they would object heartily to having anything done with that. And of course, these people have had to tolerate it since that bridge was built. Which leaves this one. I mean, of course, it's been clear probably to many that there should be a second bridge across the tracks, but this road also is aligned too low, and that affects the front of this building. If you were to raise it, you would probably have to demo the building. And how could you make them whole even while you build a new building? Well, you could build something smaller in this parking lot. It's just a great big multifaceted project. The road would be raised, and so there would have to be some turnoff to get to these businesses if you left them there. So it's really an extremely a large compass for a project just to get one bridge. But on the other hand, it's something that has been probably known as being needed for a long time. And I think that if you were to really go to town with a renewal project on that street, you'd probably end up attracting a lot more commerce than otherwise in the future. But probably your best bet for the simplest project possible would be to build a temporary bridge right next to the existing one about here. That would take out one platform access ramp there. But I think that would be easiest. If you had to tear down the existing bridge, you would put a temporary one there and just have them tolerate it for a while. In any case, it's a big project to add the second track here, although it was foreseen when the line was built, and this is because the railroad and ostensibly the Long Island Railroad and the MTA have seen fit to make it difficult. Now, coming out here, I'm quite certain that when this is an old substation here, at least this particular building, and that is spaced so a second train can pass. This business is not an obstruction, it's a fence. So the fence is an obstruction, and of course the wires are in the wrong place all along here. They tend to obstruct any second track. But the second track should extend right to the bridge and merge with the existing track. of the Manhasset Bay Bridge. Then we're over here, you see they have actually extended this pocket track now, which dead ends further west before it reaches the station, but see here you have this fancy switch. I don't know what this is all about. It seems to have been built in anticipation. It's a speedy switch. It has a long alignment. It's made so when they build the new Manhasset Bay Bridge, they'll have a way to switch tracks just in case. Anyway, they could have done it without that switch. As for the bridge, I think it would be possible to build a modern two-track bridge somehow with arches would make it more appealing. There is a reverse curve on this side between this one and then over here it goes back. So if you unwound this one a little bit, it would put you next to the current alignment, and there's not much in the way on that side, even with the splayed supports of the old bridge. So that would probably be a good way to go, and it may have been foreseen, which makes this switch even more inexplicable. So that just about concludes our discussion of getting two tracks all the way from the main line of the Long Island Railroad to the end of the Port Washington branch. Except this one little part here, they improved this grade separation here. This has been actually grade separated for a long time. There was quite a narrow bridge here before. I think you could only drive one car over it. That's what it looks like in the 2013 Google Street View. But you see here now they've made a rather long rail tunnel here, and you see over here it's quite wide too, 45 feet at least. It's a concrete box bridge. You see they've spaced the tracks far apart. That's sort of well, it's what I call the Freight Carrier Railroad Engineering FRA revolving door cabal. Does this kind of stuff. You see, you have the track spaced very far apart, and to do that you have to have a shorter radius on the outside track, and that's so in the case of freight railroads, when they realign tracks now, they put them 17.5 or 20 feet apart so that when the freight train derails, it doesn't end up with cars on the other track, so they can get to it and clear the derailment. That's part of their business formula, but I don't think it really applies to passenger railroading on the Long Island Railroad, but that's the way it goes. Now you see here where the new track, the pocket track, just ends. There might be some graphics that I could show you where it's better, but the old track, which now has this loopy curve, propagates to the two tracks of the Great Neck Station. And with that, you got 2 tracks from the Long Island Railroad main line all the way to Port Washington. A minimum of 2 tracks. Save the bridge. So now we're talking about improvements to be made after this initial one, which I think is the highest priority, getting 2 tracks to Port Washington, not alterations at Port Washington to increase the number of tracks there. So looking west, we see Great Neck looks quite large, but really, I mean, you know, it's built up. It's nicely built up. I think that's a different fare zone from Bayside, and I understand Bayside has 4 times the population and is quite an important station. But anyway, expanding past 2 tracks here is improbable. This is Little Neck. You want to get rid of the grade crossings, so it would be nice to have the platforms at a more convenient level for humans, not raised up like that off the ground where people chuck stuff under them. And to make this less intrusive, eliminate the grade crossing, and you have this scenic street here to get the trains so they're not right at eye level with the wheels. You could do that without expanding the footprint, I think, but you'd have to have a retaining wall here, of course, and the road would have to be raised a bit. So this one building, and I'm telling you, that's not very much, that building. I mean, you could build something back way better. You see, this road is not even 2 lanes. I don't know if you'd want to, I suppose if you took out that building, you could widen it a little bit, but I doubt that they want it widened, and I think they want a building back on that corner to you know, block it visually. So it'd be easy enough to build something better than that for them. So we'd have the tracks a little lower here and the road a little higher, and then ultimately in the future dividing to 3 tracks here where there's room, so you got 3 tracks through Douglaston. This is a fairly new station, redeveloped. It's nice looking, and the line could be expanded on the other side. In any case, I think 3 tracks is a priority here for 50 or 75 years from now, sometime in the future, but not right away. See, because this is expensive to add another track. These bridges were built in my lifetime, so they're still pretty good, and it's nice you got 2 tracks there, because I doubt they had 2 tracks before this these bridges were built. Now we're coming to Bayside. Bayside has 4 times the population of Great Neck, but it's not concentrated, but I do understand that it's a very important station. Well, it's a 2-track station, and it looks like the kind of thing that would last to the end of time. But you see, look at the distance between this 1928 station house and the other platform. You got room for not only a 3rd track, spaced 12.5 feet like the existing ones, because they didn't want to bother changing it. Otherwise, they would have made it 17.5 or 20 feet, because that's what they do. Not only 3 tracks, but 4 tracks they seem to have planned, and I think that's because of the Fort Totten Railway, which this is an unlikely scenario, this curve here. I would assume it went from the cut, which would be necessary even in early days. This is a cut here. Maybe they built another cut for the Fort Totten Railway. Could be. Probably it came down here. There might have been a connection from the east. But it goes out here to what was an army base with heavy artillery to guard the mouth of the East River. What is that? Throg's Neck and Fort Totten. There were artillery in both those places. 12-inch guns, ultimately. So that's probably why they made this station so wide, because they expected possibly a lot of personnel from Fort Totten and a branch line terminating at the station. I think that's what brought that on. But to expand it now, you might be getting into a number of disputative situations depending on what disputes your engineers want to cultivate in order to achieve the type of modifications they prefer. For instance, here I would think any platform extending east, which is improbable, would want to stop about here so as not to encroach on these yards, and even worse into this parking lot, because I think it would make it so that it wouldn't be good for firefighting in case there was a fire there. So, and this one crosses over the shade trees of One Station Plaza restaurant, which seems to be a big going concern there. Not only the shade trees, but their buildings. See, there's it looks to me like when the railroad found out that droves of personnel from Fort Totten was not going to materialize, they said, to hell with it, we'll just leave it 2 tracks until the end of time, and we can enforce that because, I mean, they were sociopathic even then. I know of it going back to 1910 at least, 1907, crazy stuff. But that's not the subject of this discussion. So, you know, if you had a platform there, that building's not too bad. I mean, it's been redone. It's not recognizable against what it was before. But this one has been done very nicely with perfect crenellations and fenestrations, and they even keep the blinds a certain way. So you wouldn't want to get into that. They've got a fancy tenant, and to put the platform, there's an L under here. You see the existing platform, there's an L that sticks out at a lower level, but 1 story or so higher than the platform. So anything you did like this would undermine that building and probably all these out here, although that's more an error of parallax. So the only advantage would be access from this not very big parking lot, which is probably already spoken for. So I think the correct way to develop it with 3 tracks, is you have to get rid of the platforms extending down here. and the stairs, then you'll have ample room for a center track, with this being the center line of the northern track. And then you add a platform for that track, and then you're faced with this bunch of disputative acquisition problems from here all the way to here. And like I say, I think this building is quite desirable now. If you could get an apartment there and live in bucolic Bayside, feet from the station, why, that would be a very desirable thing. So I think for the time being, that's a going concern that has to be compensated for, and you can't get a fire engine in there. That would be a no-go. These buildings, were built, the ones on the north side of the street are newer and possibly more pleasant. They still have they have the garage and the entrance at the same level, but these solve the problem of having the garage on the first floor by having these gigantic stoops, whereas further west in Queens, and maybe 10 or 20 years before this, see, these are from around 1960, they would have a half street in back and you were expected to use the garage in back, but I don't think anybody used their garage for a car because it was just too hard to drive down there. Anyway, so these are all this on the right side we're seeing is from about the 1960s, and here's the big dormitory of an apartment house. And I think, well, you could arrange to make all these owners whole, and of course in this case they're probably individual owners, they're probably individually owned, but the railroad needs to think ahead in doing this stuff and planning any acquisition they need to make, possibly doing it individually on the sly. In any case, if you build something new here that can accommodate the same number of people and make it quite luxurious, and then make these people whole by giving them a good deal on it so that it improves their financial situation, you'd have a way to do it without spending a lot of money, because of course you'd have a separate developer with that. So the point is to extend a separate outbound platform from the existing one over to quite close to this bridge. That's even with the end of a 1,050-foot platform, and you would have stairs, and given new development here, the provision for having access to both platforms could be sort of written into it. I'd be curious to know if in order to have 4 tracks, they had a retaining wall here, and if they built it ahead of time, because this is an embankment, a sloped embankment here. But if they intended to have 4 tracks to begin with, they would have built a retaining wall around here, or made it so that the station house could stand independently if the embankment were shaved away and a retaining wall substituted. so you'd have a platform down at that level. Also contributing to that is this. They say in Wikipedia that's an express, railroad express office, which it probably was, but before that, it seems to me it was built with a station and intended to be a control tower for this, for station tracks here. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so high. This was no passenger waiting area, I don't believe, especially with that cupola on top there. So, but now there's no switches at all. There's no special track work. It's just two tracks straight through. So that contributes to my theory about the idea of them wanting a big station here that was never realized, and of course it would never, once the military base was out as far as having a branch. There was no use in any branch like that because it only had the one big station. That was about all you could have. So this tower was designed to control the merging of the branch line into the line, probably for access to the city, a direct run into the city from the military base. And the reason for having the tower positioned here is probably so that you could contend with the directional conflicts of the eastbound tracks, any train stopping at Bayside, which it would, any a Fort Cotton bound train would have to cross the express and then two inbound tracks in order to get onto that line. So that would be a pretty crucial position for a tower. And I'm not saying that this platform down here would have to go. I mean, the track would remain in the same place, but I don't know if there's much use in it. It depends on how access is arranged for that now. But it makes an awfully long platform. Preferably it would, or probably preferably it would end at the street here with the existing stairway and so on. So that's Bayside. So we're off to Auburndale, and it shows up a little bit quicker than it would otherwise with my new configuration. I dislike this station. It looks like an elongated bacteria, and it's too close to Broadway. And also, it blocks any possibility of a third track. So I wonder what they were thinking when they opened this in 1930. You got a big wide bridge, but it's impossible to have a third track. And of course, with the configuration I'm suggesting here, you wouldn't be able to. But this station, besides being too close, is rather unpleasant, I think. Well, I mean, besides the condition, you know, you've got a hole here that says Auburndale, although it might be, it means maybe they should say 2 trains or something. And of course, past the newer elevator, there is another hole over there, and that's all there was with this great big no man's land of space, so it's not so bloody attractive. And I think you could have a much nicer setup with this station in a better position, because on the other side you have Francis Lewis Boulevard there. That's a big street, and I think any detractor could be made whole, or any reasoned detractor, someone with a skin in the game. You see here I have this lined up with the retaining walls. The retaining walls are 50 feet apart inclusive, and it's quite a drop to this area with the garage on either side. So the platform would be extend out well above that if it's actually a 12.5-foot platform, and you could have the same here without sacrificing any parking space, if that's what people want. In fact, you could have a where is this blasted thing? You could have a shows up better this way once it gets through its rounds. You could have a private entrance from the platforms on both sides, about in the middle here, for people who live in the area, just like the golf course up at Plandome, and let them control who goes in, who can exit at the middle of the platform to their private entrances. I think that would work nicely, and you could have a much nicer arrangement here. Well, I mean, there's none at all now, but you could have a ramp for everyone that goes up and turns and then goes a little ways toward the platform. That would be very nice and make the platform less of a precipice, because then you'd have it surrounded by ramp. Maybe just ramps only at this one, I think, rather than the Broadway one, because I think, and a vastly improved interface here for the street with the grocery store here and so on, or whatever ends up there. You could have it planted nicely, and have a ramp that goes up by the bridge and turns out and then up to the platform. That would make a very nice arrangement, and you could skip the elevators, and also this protozoa shaped thing here. So now we're on to Broadway. This is just my well, never mind that. This is my grade line. But there's Broadway. As I said earlier, it could be made into, it looks like it was designed to be 4 tracks, but given that, you could certainly have 3. And of course you'd need a new long bridge here, but probably that bridge is about due for replacement. This is my grade measure line, so you can do that in Google Earth, although we're aimed in the opposite direction of the line, if that makes any sense. Here's this bridge. See, it doesn't show the bridges, so that's what that looks like. This is all from satellite imagery. You see the oh dear. Well, Broadway is about the summit there, and then we're going down towards Murry Hill. And you see Murry Hill has a screwed up bunch of, it shows something like that for each bridge. This one does show the bridges. Well, maybe only when you approach them laterally, but chances are they have center support. So if you want to have a centered track, you've got to fix up those bridges, and then the tracks would merge over here. You can see they've redone these tracks now, and these tracks are tangents, so I think you would be able to comply with the American standards for having switches surrounded by tangent segments, I mean. For that, well, for the time being anyway, I don't know. You might build the station at Flushing first and then want to zero down to 2 tracks here, but I think it should be 3 all the way through. So we can do without the special track work there, except for any versatility you might want to install, but really that would be better over here on this stretch right before Flushing, where assumedly you'd be going slower with this sharp curve here, which I've made sharper. So you would be able to have a complete interchange between the center track and the outside tracks here at reasonably good speed. I've been looking into rearranging the center lines here because people have built things since the line was built at 50 feet wide, especially along in here somewhere. This is one of them. It's only 47 feet there. Is this the correct imagery? I believe so. So the center line would need to be changed, and that's what all that was about. But anyway, let's start looking towards Flushing. I started out at this warehouse here, thinking, oh no, this is wrong. What have we done? Oh, I see. No, it goes like this. Started out at this warehouse. You see there's a 10-foot walkway behind it, which it's an old warehouse, but it's been repurposed for storage, and you have, or used to have, a 3rd track here, and I believe this 3rd track went on by the warehouse. If it didn't serve it in some way, maybe there was a branch, a spur that went that way, but so you had enough room for a 3rd track here, because with this line it's 25 feet from the center line of this track to the walkway, and the walkway doesn't exist there, so it would be 35 feet, plenty of room. But that doesn't jibe with this place I've mentioned before, and it makes, where is it? It makes it so the only way to do it is to have this building here. See, it's built right up against the tracks, and the only way to do it is to add a track on this side, and the only way to do it at the other end of the station is to add a track on the other side. So you see, it's rather complicated. Now we need this darker imagery again. Hopefully so you can see it, but I don't know why it that doesn't look like the imagery I wanted to use. Well, it's just gonna have to do. So there we are, and you see the platform has a broader curve than it did before. It was kind of abrupt. Not that it matters. Here the idea has been to This is different imagery. Well, maybe it isn't. Wait, there's one way to find out. It's these buildings because I haven't compensated for the parallax there. So that's right. So here's the new center line on the center track, and you extend the platform right over here, and there are many beneficial things you could do, and it's worth casting the street into darkness a little bit for a little bit for a greater distance. Um, Here you have the entrance to, or a possible entrance maybe, to the New World Mall, and there are many things that could be done. You have three buildings that have to go to do this. That would be this one here, and this one, and this one. They can't be there if you have the bridge work and the right-of-way for the three tracks. So there wouldn't be too many people in those buildings because they're not tall. But if you could build something that would benefit their business and have it all ready to go before you kick them out, why you could, um, they could have much better situation for, conducting commerce. Now, if you come over here, well, this building could stay and this one could stay, but that might be a good place to develop. But I think you could have up and over the tracks and platforms and then have access from this platform also to things on this side and that side. And the same over here. The center line is positioned right between the elevators. That's a tangent. And, well, assumedly, but the elevators as measured here are about 4 feet below the top of rails, so there's something wrong with it, but it's close anyway. It proves that it can be done. This one is, they've already demolished the building that was there. You see the old outline comes right up to the existing track. And they were gonna build something here, but it looks like they're going to lose the property now. The architect told me that the back of the planned building was 15 feet back from the property line, which would definitely be no farther than the wall we see here. See, there was an exit from the roof there. So that's no-go for an indeterminate period. Probably someone else will buy the property. So that's Flushing, and I think you could, it would be a great thing for the downtown area there. Some of those buildings are old. And the important thing is if you have hordes of crowds at Willets Point, then you're going to want to bypass Flushing because most people will take the subway from the big stadium and possibly from the tennis stadium too, because it's not much of a walk to the subway. So that's Flushing. Now we're on to Willets Point, Mets-Willets Point, and this is where we do something really fancy. This would be the center line. See, so the center line is moved in the case of this part, but not in the case of the way the station was planned at some point. I guess this was built for or altered for the World's Fair. These zigzag roofs are worth preserving. They're such a statement on, you might call it the highfalutin character of the '39 World's Fair, and then these pleated roof lines on. I think they should be preserved in the literature on that was produced for the LaGuardia Air Train, which is a ludicrous idea to have something like that here. They call them zigzags, but they don't think they're worth preserving. And of course, it looks clear to me that neither does the MTA, but I would say they are a wonderful statement of the time, and they don't look good like this. See, if you look at them head on and they got something blocking them, it's not all that great, but you see how they're supposed to look there. They're pleated roof, or zigzags, as the architect of that was hired as a consultant on the LaGuardia Air Train. I do hope you'll look at my LaGuardia Air Train proposals at railnycaccess.com. So that's the thing. We go back to the original center line, although it was never there. I don't know. Anyway, this is a fortuitous grade alignment. Here is the center of the vertical curve at the start of the line, and then it would have to cross under the track on the south, and then this road is actually just a bit higher than the station. It looks in the picture like it's lower, but the road is a couple of feet higher than this elevation here. So it's easy to get down there, and having only 750 feet between this marker and the center of the vertical curve is no problem, because the tracks are going up to the bridge, except this one, which is going down. Then you want to have a nice broad curve far enough away from the embankment, and then to run up the middle of this little road here until we come to the new station, because I think that's a desirable one to have. This is a transit desert. This is Junction Boulevard and International Street, so I've decided to put a hyphen in it and call it International Junction. That would be something you could have with this tunnel, and you could have, of course, the tunnel run non-stop directionally, depending on the time of the day. Now here we split the tunnel in two, and then we're running into the Elmhurst station with this fancy track work, which is frowned upon now. You can't have crossovers, although they're building them at Jamaica with really shoddy alignments. This is a very nice alignment here. And so you could do cross-platform transfers, or is it really not all that simple? Yes, it's simple, but these tracks here, you have to pretend that the East Side Access mitigation project tracks and tunnels don't exist, see, and then these tracks, the two in the middle, and in addition to these, are the ones that count for being able to bring trains in here to any track and have cross-platform transfers with more trains going into Manhattan than you have running back and forth between Elmhurst and Port Washington. That's one idea for a solution. Another one would be to get it two tracks all the way to Port Washington. But The one thing it simply is not is adding more tracks at the Port Washington station and expanding outside that existing footprint. That is a no-go, and it has to be made clear to them. So let's see about this station. See, all the solutions have problems. If you're going to have 4 platforms, I made this 60 feet apart at the center line of the outside tracks, which makes the platforms 13 feet 4 inches apart, which is a familiar figure for American railroading. Because all the tracks are spaced that way. On the Long Island Railroad, until they did the 3 tracking, where now they've made it 15 instead of 13 feet 4 inches. Times 4 is 40 feet, or times 3 is 40 feet. So these are 20 feet broader apart than that to make room for the platform, and they aren't very wide, but I assume Port Washington branch passengers applied enough to walk across it without getting into arguments. Now, there is the matter of the boundaries, and we have to use this imagery, which is not showing, and I can't tell which one of these things. Oh, that's the one. This imagery here is what the station was drawn at some time ago. Well, then it should line up, right? Wrong. Something's wrong. Maybe we didn't hit it hard enough. Ah, there we go. Okie doke. So now you got problems here. I've placed this one is along the curb, just happens to be my preferred distance of 8 feet 9 inches from the center line, as space required for the right of way, and it gets worse here. See, now I have some suggestions for that. Well, this could be, this would not be such a big deal around here, so you could, shave off the platform and not hit the funeral home here. But that was put over this is the original boundary line, and you see it's been violated, I no doubt with permission of the railroad. That's what they do. Anyway, there would not be 4 tracks here if you are going to use this station for cross-platform transfers. So, the only property issues you have are ones like this. They just cleaned up this one, and there's another one over here. But see, you wouldn't have this outside track here until after the east side access mitigation project is built. Well, I've got my eye on this strip mall kind of thing here. The anchor is, well, now it's the bank. This is a bank here, and that's a relatively new building. This Asian supermarket is probably the oldest of the 3. Here's another one, and there's another one over here. Asian supermarket, and I think it's the oldest, and also maybe they have some kind of pretension to being fancier. I don't know. It looks pretty cool inside anyway, because there's Google Earth imagery and you can look at it. But what I was thinking is you want to have a couple of stories here, and also you want to change the grade. It's about a 1.6 foot grade down to this. So you can open up 1.6%. I guess it's about 3 feet or something, down to here, and get rid of this retaining wall because that's a homeless, hangout there. Of course, I don't know. If you rebuild things, there are codes for parking and stuff, but I don't know if you build a number of stores, if you have to provide a certain amount of parking. I don't know how that works in New York, but there might be something like that. Anyway, I think you could rebuild this one to stunning effect and give them a second level that would give this supermarket actually more room rather than less. That would result from taking out this corner because that's not too great. And then, that you might be able to sell these people on, because I don't know if there were to be a station building, a station house at some point, it might want to go there. You want something that blocks the road enough. Of course, the only ones you need to take out would be this 3, 4, 5, 1, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 firewalls to the end. So those anyway would absolutely have to go. But maybe there should be a station house where one could sit down. And I think you'd want to have stairs here. The 2 outside tracks would have to end before you hit the funeral home here. So that's about it, and that's what I see as, so you have to, one has to examine the situation in Elmhurst more pertaining to the property to find out how you could arrange something so as not to create disputes, as the engineers who are the consultants that work for the MTA and everyone else are trying to do, the rail cabal, but to try and make solutions that leave the stakeholders not only whole but better than they were before. Now here already is a new building, but I'm not seeing oh boy, I meant to show that. Anyway, that's not in conflict with, well, I don't see it at all, but this is a new building here, and it's not in conflict with this track. You just got to take my word for it. So that's it, and I hope you enjoyed this description of what I think is the best future plan for the Port Washington branch, and it's not as good when you're making up the design as you're making the video. That's not too good, and so you may find there are places, well, I know there are places where I got a little bit off track, but it's better than what they're proposing. Always, you can always do better than what they're proposing. It's that bad, and we've got to do something about it. And I think, that the MTA is well-meaning, and they need to get after this cabal, including the FRA, because they make standards that are not, some standards are violations of old standards that have been for 100 years. So it needs to be changed, because they want to turn it in, the freight railroading racket is just make it so you can have as many derailments as necessary, just so you don't have to do any maintenance at all. That's That's the way they operate. And it won't work for the Long Island Railroad. But that's what they're trying to do with these alterations at Jamaica and, well, you see what it is not to have express service anymore on the Port Washington branch. So again, thank you for watching, and I hope you look at the next video about the Eastside Access Mitigation Project and using the Montauk branch where you turn off there at White Pot Junction on the Rockaway Beach branch to totally cure the train throughput problem at Jamaica. You got to have some way to get through Jamaica without stopping and somewhere else to stop, and there's a place to do it, and I'm hoping to make a video to describe that. So thanks again, and I hope